This is the follow-up from the middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, bringing more of your voices into the conversation each week. And you had a lot to say about how the Democratic Party should change. Should it be more moderate? Should it embrace the energy of its progressive base with people like Abdul El-Sayed, who just won that primary for the Senate seat in Michigan and is now going to be in a race to try to take that Senate seat this fall? Let's bring in our good friend Zoe Clark, political director at Michigan Public, for this week's episode. Hey, Zoe.
Hey, Jeremy Hobson, how you doing?
I'm doing well. And the El-Sayed victory has been a very big national story. How is it playing out in the state of Michigan over the last week or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been as big or bigger. It sort of took up all of the oxygen. Some polls showed that Abdul El-Sayed was up something like double digits heading into the election. So I think it just got so much attention, like what was going to happen. It ended up being just by 1 point that he won. But this has Democrats just like doing nothing but talking about what this election is going to mean. It has become bigger than the gubernatorial race that we have that's open also because Governor Gretchen Whitmer is retiring.
Are there fears that among Democrats that El-Sayed is not going to be able to beat Mike Rogers, the Republican?
Among some Democrats, yeah, there's a lot of nerves. I can't tell you how many voters I actually talked to on election day who didn't, put in their absentee ballot or vote early, who said, like, I want to vote for Abdul El-Sayed. I think he's got the energy, but I just don't know that he can beat Republican Mike Rogers in November. So electability has been sort of the word of choice over the past few weeks here.
Is that because they feel that he's too far to the left? Is that because of his name, which Republicans have gone after and sort of pointing out the fact that he is Muslim? Is it because of his position on Israel? Like, what are the reasons that people think he would have a hard time winning?
I think the main thing is feeling like he is too far to the left compared to where Michigan is. Like, let's put this into context. We are a swing state. We are a purple state. As you and I have talked about before, Jeremy, we have voted twice for Barack Obama and once for Joe Biden, and we have voted twice for Donald Trump. So we go back and forth. And so there is this sort of independent middle that you have to win. And what the establishment Democrats were saying, those folks who were behind Haley Stevens, the more centrist, they were saying that, look, like Abdul El-Sayed might be able to win a Democratic primary, but come the general, can he get those moderate voters to vote for him? And I can tell you what Abdul El-Sayed's team says is, look, we may not be able to get all of that moderate middle, but we can get people who don't normally vote to turn out. It's a little like what Donald Trump did in Michigan in 2024. He didn't win all Republicans, but he got voters who usually sit on the sidelines, who don't turn out to vote, to come out.
Well, that gets us to a voicemail that we got from a listener across Lake Michigan from you in Wisconsin. Listen to
Love
this.
it.
Hi, this is David calling from Wisconsin. I would say the Democratic Party needs to lean more towards the middle in order to catch the disenfranchised, unhappy Republican voter, of which I am one. I feel like I have no party to go to. I'm not at all unhappy with the way Donald Trump is running things and his death grip on the party, but the far left of the Democratic Party doesn't leave a place for moderate Republicans to go to. And if Democrats want to win elections, those are the people I think they're going to have to go after.
So, Zoe, in the last week or so, as the general election has become more clear and you know who the candidates are there in Michigan for Senate, have they started to go after those people in the middle? Has El-Sayed tried to appeal to even disaffected Republicans?
Yeah, so there was this unity breakfast Thursday morning right after the election when he and Haley Stevens sort of put down their arms and gave each other a big hug. And then there was a rally Friday night where, Abdul is like, I'm going to go after all votes. But what was the most interesting, I think, during that same period of time is, again, the Republican Mike Rogers put out this 2-minute video. He's sitting on the couch next to his wife, and he's basically talking to Democratic voters. He's like, I'm talking to you. If you feel like the party has left you, you have a home here with me. So, yeah, I mean, it has already started within 48 hours of the election being called.
What would you say are the biggest issues for Michiganders right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think for everyone right now, it's affordability, it's the
Yep.
pocketbook issues, it's the price of gas, right? It's the things that Americans over and over are saying they want their politicians to be talking about, and rather than, the war in Iran or a ballroom. And this is where Abdul did a really good job of staying on message. Money out of politics, money in your pocket, Medicare for all was what his slogan was, and he just pressed it, and he pressed it really hard.
Well, and I've noticed one of the other things on that point that he has been saying is because he is under pressure from probably some Jewish voters in the state who are
Yeah.
a bit worried about what he has said about U.S. support for Israel. But he makes a point to say, I don't want our money going to Israel or Saudi Arabia or Pakistan or these other places just to kind
Or
of,
Egypt, where his family is
right.
from. And what he
Or
says
Egypt
is
was right.
he says, I want the dollars to go to classrooms. I want the dollars to go to communities. So that's been his pushback. And he did it over the weekend when he was on all the national shows on Meet the Press and State of the Union. That's how he answers, which is he makes it less about Israel and Gaza and more about where your tax dollars are going.
Right. Let's listen to another voicemail.
Hi, my name's Ethan. I'm in Los Angeles. I was raised very liberal, raised Democrat. I just think it's so crazy. I think the way that the Democratic Party is treating DSA candidates is so outrageous to me. They're winning. There's momentum behind them. There's excitement behind them. And to treat that wing of the party, none of whom are evil, it's part of why Donald Trump has succeeded, is that he loves winners and he has rallied around and courted winners. And for Fetterman and James Carville and Hakeem Jeffries and this entrenched sort of Chuck Schumer class of the Democratic Party to not see that a winner is a winner, to me, is outrageous.
All right, now just to be clear for our audience, Zoe, El-Sayed is not a democratic socialist, right? He's
He
just
is
a
not.
Democrat.
He does not identify as a DSA. He likes to say he's a capitalist.
But what do you make of what that caller had to say just about the establishment and a winner is a winner, and why does the establishment
Yeah.
not just go after this energy in the base?
Yeah, especially when, the Democratic Party keeps saying what a big tent they have. Look, this is what this caller is talking about is the fundamental issue that the Democratic Party is having right now. Like, how big of a tent can you create, right? Can this party hold all of these different ideas and ideals? And one of the reasons that the Democratic Senate primary was such a big deal was because this is the biggest laboratory that we're going to be seeing it in Michigan, right? Like when you're talking about what happened in New York is a blue city. When you're talking
Yep.
about some of these other congressional races where DSA candidates have won in other states, those were Democratic held seats. And so what's so fascinating now is Michigan is going to be this purple laboratory, and it's really in November gonna, I think, I don't want to say put to the test, but it's going to give us some better idea about whether some of these DSA aligned, DSA flirtatious candidates can do well in purple states. And this goes back to what turnout looks like and who actually comes out on November 3rd to vote.
Yeah, I used to live in New York City, and I will say it's a great city, but also it is so big and it's the center of our media and finance and so many other things that you do get the idea when you're there that it's the only place that matters. And that's why we have seen, I could name 3 recent New York City mayors who ran for president, all unsuccessfully, because sometimes that does not translate outside of that bubble, which is exactly what it is. No comment from Zoe. Okay. Let me ask you, because the caller brought up winners. Now, Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, endorsed Haley Stevens in the primary, who lost. She then endorsed El-Sayed after that. What does that do, if anything, to Whitmer's credibility if she's got national ambitions, that she picked the loser?
It's a great question. And she stayed out of it until the last minute. I mean, she was not going to endorse. She had made it clear. And then about like 10 days before the election, she decided to jump in when it looked like the polls were showing that it was going to be Abdul's. Look, she is a candidate who won in 2018. Haley Stevens is a candidate that won in 2018. The 2018 Democratic Party who fought against Donald Trump is different than this sort of insurgency that we are seeing, the Abdul El-Sayeds. I think, she put her neck out on the line for Haley Stevens. And now she's going to have to figure out what comes next for her. I can tell you that among the progressive Democrats in Michigan, there's some strong feelings right now against Gretchen Whitmer. She's come fully on board with data centers, which is just like huge here in Michigan right now. You see both Democrats and Republicans against it. I won't go into the weeds, but she vetoed some legislation that a Democratic trifecta had passed a term ago. So there's some Democrats on the left that are not happy with this governor right now.
Interesting. All right, well, stand by. We've got more to discuss with Michigan Public's Zoe Clark in just a moment. Welcome back to the follow-up. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I am joined by Zoe Clark, political director at Michigan Public. Zoe, I will remind our audience that on our next show, we are going to be asking how the Republican Party should change. We just did how the Democratic Party should change. But in terms of the Republican Party, how are Republicans feeling in Michigan right now? They have not been elected to a prominent statewide office since 2014, even though, as you said, Trump won the state both in 2016 and 2024.
Yeah, I mean, statewide, they haven't been doing very well. And if you go back and you look at U.S. Senate races, we have not sent a Republican senator to D.C. since 1994. Spence Abraham, when he lost to Debbie Stabenow in 2000, was the last time we had a Republican senator. So that tells you something. Look, Republicans have some ground to make up here for sure, because Donald Trump, even though he is not at the top of the ticket, is underwater in Michigan. Yes, the state voted for him in 24, but much like across the country, people are not happy with his handling of the economy. And so, what Democrats are going to try to do is tie Mike Rogers to Donald Trump and to the economy and affordability as much as they just possibly can, that really running against Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is making it easy because he's, over the past few days, been truth socialing and talking about Abdul El-Sayed quite a bit.
Do you think that Mike Rogers is going to try to stay away from Trump, given that he's underwater in Michigan?
I think Mike Rogers has some work to do when it comes to what kind of relationship he's going to have with the president. The president was here a couple weeks ago. Before the primary, Mike Rogers stood on stage with him. They did a whole meet and greet. But this is now the general, when, again, as we've talked about, you sort of pivot to the middle. And,
right.
Mike Rogers needs Donald Trump's base to get out and vote. He needs that enthusiasm. But whether or not he wants to now campaign around the state of Michigan with this president, TBD.
All right, let's get to another voicemail. Listen to this.
Hi, this is Michael from Minnesota. The Democrats really just need someone they can rally behind. I mean, the real power of the conservative movement had that they had this anchor, Donald Trump, in the middle of their party that they could build everything outward and around. And we haven't had anything like that in our country in a long time for the Democratic Party.
All right, so a couple of things here, Zoe. First of all, Donald Trump is a unique figure in the fact that he has been famous in this country for decades. So it's a little easier maybe for people to rally around him. But if you think about the last several elections, the Democrats did rally around Kamala Harris. They rallied around Joe Biden when he got the nomination. They certainly rallied around Barack Obama. Do you think that there is a unified Democratic Party right now? Just the bigger question here.
No. I don't think there's a unified Democratic Party. And I think it's making a lot of Democrats nervous. And I think a lot of people are wondering where the uniters are. I was having this conversation with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, who was the one that was saying in 2016 that Donald Trump was going to win Michigan, and no one was listening to her, and she was like, it's going to happen, I can tell. So we all go to Congresswoman Debbie Dingell for her sort of spidey sense of what's going to happen. And I was talking to her last week, and she's like, we've got to get united. And I said, whose job is it? Like, whose job is it to do that right now, especially when you've got folks like Governor Gretchen Whitmer endorsing? And so I think it's going to be someone like a Debbie Dingell. Pete Buttigieg, who is now a Michigander, was here Friday night for this rally. He could be another uniter possibly, but I'm talking now about Michigan. But nationwide, I don't think that there is one voice in the way that we had Barack Obama for those 8 years in this country who was able to unify Democrats. Interesting little tidbit, though, naming Barack Obama. Barack Obama had a little phone call with Abdul El-Sayed over the weekend. And it would be very interesting to see whether the former president decides to come to Michigan and stump with El-Sayed. That would be a really big deal because El-Sayed needs some Detroit votes bad.
Did Pete Buttigieg, by the way, endorse El-Sayed before the primary?
No,
Probably
he stayed
not,
out of
right?
it too.
No.
So it was
He
all the
stayed out.
people that had sort of stayed out coming in to unify.
Uh-huh. All right, let's get to one more voicemail. Listen to this caller.
Hey, my name's David Whiteside. I'm a U.S. citizen living in Canada. I'm calling from Quebec. I have no idea what anyone in Democratic leadership stands for, what their vision is, what their concrete policy proposals are. What does Hakeem Jeffries want to see the Democratic Party do? What does Chuck Schumer want to see the Democratic Party do? The only Democrat I can think of who I've even heard a concrete national policy from is Bernie Sanders. And he's getting too old to be an important force in politics now. So yeah, I'm pretty disappointed in Democratic leadership and the complete lack of an ability to even give us any policy proposals to get people inspired to vote Democrat.
All right, first of all, I love that we got a call from Quebec because we do have a lot of listeners in Canada, and I'm very happy to hear from that one. But what about the issue of leadership? He mentioned Chuck Schumer, who, by the way, did not endorse El-Sayed, but they have talked also since the primary.
Yeah.
Is El-Sayed running against the leadership of his own party, or was he, and is he now?
Yes and yes. I mean, that's what's crazy is now basically Chuck Schumer has to try to get someone to win a Senate seat who likely would not vote for him for leader of the Democratic Party. But, back to that overall message of what is the message, I think that, again, is what Abdul El-Sayed's campaign did so well, was they stuck to these three messages that were about money and Medicare and just hammered them home and hammered them home. In fact, it's interesting. One of the things that the campaign said is they took away from his loss to Gretchen Whitmer in 2018 when he was running for governor, and she ran on fixing the damn roads. And that just sort of became known around the state. And so they decided to kind of do something similar. And people would be at rallies and he would say, money out of, and people would yell politics, money in your pockets, Medicare for all. I mean, it really became a rallying cry. And so I think that's what a lot of Democratic voters, particularly younger voters, are looking for. They really want change. They feel like the institutions, the systems aren't working, and they're angry and they're disaffected and they're disenchanted with the system as it is right now.
Do you think that the Democratic Party overall has a message like that yet, or have they not figured out, but for the fall, how to cleanly say this is what we want to do?
Yeah, I think some of it is going to have to be state-based, right? Like what works in each state does not work in each state. So you've got to figure that out. But I mean, I'm not hearing one party position.
Message.
No.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do when you're not the party in power too. Right.
And when you don't have a president who's like the leader of it all.
Right.
You've got all these state races going on.
And then you've got all these folks who are lying in wait, who want to run for president, who are trying to become the face of it, whether you're Gavin Newsom or J.B. Pritzker, or you've got Kamala Harris coming out again, who actually just over the past few days endorsed Abdul El-Sayed also. So you've got this sort of like intra-party fight among who is going to be the leader of the party happening behind all of this.
Are you previewing your prediction for this podcast of who is going to be the nominee in 2028?
I am not, and don't make me. That is
Okay.
too hard, Jeremy Hobson. That is too hard.
All right, so what's your prediction, Zoe? Everybody gets to make one.
Yeah, my prediction is actually going to be about turnout. So we saw a really, really high turnout this primary election, which does not always happen. And we don't always see high turnout in the midterms. But in 2022, which was like our last highest turnout, we were at 58.9%. I'm gonna go out there and say I think we reached 60 in terms of 60% turnout in November over, again, because we have so many seats that are just wide open. It's not just this open U.S. Senate seat. It's also a gubernatorial race, a Secretary of State, Attorney General, our entire state house, our entire state Senate, our congressional delegation. It's a huge midterm here in Michigan. And I think voters are paying attention.
Is there a lot of early voting in Michigan? People allowed to do that?
There is. It's a newer constitutional amendment that we passed, but we get early voting now and also absentee voting. No reason absentee. It used to be that you had to have a reason, and now there's no reason absentee. So we'll see absentee voting, we'll see early in-person voting, and then we'll see day of. So it doesn't just start November 3rd anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Zoe Clark, Political Director of Michigan Public. Always great to talk to you. Thank you, Zoe.
Thanks, Jeremy.
And again, in a few days, we're going to be asking what you would want to change about the Republican Party. We'd love to hear from you for that show. In the meantime, make sure you follow us so you don't miss an episode. I am Jeremy Hobson. I will talk to you soon.